At the Kuhn Hotel in Bangkok, the nations of Asia gather together. The worship is out of this world, and the family atmosphere is heavenly. The messages are powerfully prophetic.
I find in your presence, flowing from your goodness, you supply my every need.
This is our Victory Asia platform. I think platform is the best metaphor to describe modern apostolic ministry. Here, leaders from Thailand, Philippines, Cambodia, actually 2 ministries in Cambodia and 2 national ministries in Myanmar as well, from Pakistan, Nepal, India, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam all come together to be mobilized into the next great challenge that God has for us. And I can't describe how powerful these times are, except to say that they result in new and growing ministries being birthed across Asia.
So the Victory Asia platform has been, in the heart of God from the beginning. And when I met Pastor Alan Terry, Purvis, way back in the day, maybe even in the 90s, I met them in Canada, and it was so clear in their heart. They were able to articulate the vision of what God had for them here in Asia, that I could really see my destiny as part of this Victory Asia platform. I was a student in the Bible school. We were involved in the media ministry, whatever we could do to help. And now me and my husband, we are planting churches.
Victory Asia platform is not just like one nation, right? But there's many nations coming together. And as we come together from many nations, we can inspire each other. And especially Victory Asia platform, we have a heart of church planting. And that's my heart. And I believe that that's Jesus' heart also.
Because we have a community of people around us, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, really. And we're going farther than we ever could have if we hadn't had that. So we're building on a foundation that God has given this ministry, and we're continuing to build on that. And everything that we're doing is it's already been modeled for us. It's been modeled for us across the nations. It's been modeled for us here at the base. It would be impossible to do what we're doing now without having the platform that God has given us to be part of. So we're so thankful and grateful to be part of this ministry.
Young men and women come to this platform originally to be trained and sent usually back to their own country. Then every year we'll host a leadership summit where they all come together for new empowerment. And they show up from these dozen national ministries, excited for the fellowship. I mean, can you imagine when the leaders from India and Malaysia get together, start talking about vision, sharing secrets and successes with each other? Sri Lanka and Nepal talk together. These countries love each other. Vietnam and Thailand, Philippines and Cambodia. Man, what a dynamic is built there. And we just finished our summit for this year. Everybody's gone home and the comments are pouring in. Today, Becky joins me to have a look at some of these messages from the nations and what you and I might glean from them. And I promise you, this will be empowering. And here we are with Becky.
Here we are.
Talking about Summit and the amazing things that happened there.
Yeah.
It was such a blessing. But the excitement of the guys that came were blessed, were touched, right?
Yes.
Really had an encounter with God, went back home. And then we asked them to send comments, because it's really good to have feedback, right?
Yes, it is.
So we've got some fresh in comments here, Becky, that we can just go over and have a look and see what really happened. And Chris Pagan from the start, I think Tab sent me one too, but he's talking about being together with everybody, and that was a huge theme, I think.
Yeah, I found that hearing that over and over again from people, and that was probably one of my favorite things myself as well, is being able to be face to face with your family.
Do you think it's because we've been apart for so long?
I think it definitely has. it's part of the equation, because when something is delayed or denied for a certain season,
Right.
when you're allowed to enjoy it again,
Right.
it's more valuable, it's more precious. I think that's probably one of the advantages of not being able to meet throughout the COVID season, is that it really caused you to see how important and how vital it is to actually meet in person, you
Totally,
know.
yeah.
Sometimes we think, well, we're nations apart, it's not always the most convenient thing, but it is so important to physically be in the same space, in the same place.
Yeah,
So
and that is one of our priorities.
Yes,
we
it
make
is.
that a priority for all of our resources.
Yeah.
Is that we will spend time together.
that's right.
In their nations or all together
Yeah,
here, whatever,
that's right.
whatever happens. So
And it's the same for our partners in Canada too, you know. It's good
Right.
to get the opportunity to come, because it's not the same until you're here. Something changes. when you're
absolutely
here.
right. I don't know if anybody's ever come and hasn't had a life change, like
Yeah,
a
doesn't
nature.
happen. Does not
That's
exist.
right. It doesn't exist. It's a money back guarantee, in fact. And he's also talking about, you know, some of these guys. It says it came to us as kids, and they're now powerful men and women doing things in their nations. You know, and it's true. I mean, we've been going here for a number of years now, decades, right?
Yes.
And then the fruitfulness that comes out of that is so cool.
That's very good. Swan kind of said the same thing though too, right? With learning, spending time with leaders and being able to be with the Victory Family Asia thing. But I loved how he talked about just being aware of the culture that we have in order to
Right.
be able to create a system for training disciples that actually makes a difference in the next generation. And that was the cool thing. I loved, you know, like what Pastor Chris said, seeing the old guys, but then also seeing the new guys, you know, the
Right.
guys like Micah that have just been newly released, you know, a year or so into the mission field in his home country. And it's just been amazing to
Yeah.
see what he's been able to produce so
That's
far.
so true. And speaking of Myanmar, John, he's always excited. I mean,
Yeah.
John is such a
I love
visionary,
that guy.
isn't he? Yes. And then and he's the only guy that he sends a greeting. He says, "I hope you're all refreshed as I am." You know, he's so sweet like that.
Yes, he is.
So yeah, and then talking about, I think too, the messages. A lot of them mention the messages. The first night I preached on Peter in the boat, and then the second night Rich preached on kind of the same thing, but needing an encounter with God. And I think, Becky, one of the things about those messages is that, for me anyway, I worked on that message for like 3 months in prayer and
Yeah.
you know, and that kind of thing, because you're putting a big investment in bringing these guys from all over the nations. And by the way, I want to say thank you to
Yes.
all of those of you
Yes.
who helped support our guys get here from the nations. I was totally surprised. We didn't expect it. I was
Yeah.
actually just going to let them come if they could. If they couldn't, they couldn't. And then, you know, suddenly it's like, oh yeah, there's a guy that wants to help me. And then, so we put some feelers out there, and it was just awesome. So we really appreciate you all for that, and the guys really appreciate you. So these are comments to your credit, really.
We always have a good time in Summit, and it's always powerful and it's always prophetic. But
Right.
this year it just felt like there was such an open heaven over everything, you know.
Right.
The messages, the worship, the time of prayer and ministry,
So
even
true.
the fellowship time,
Yeah.
you know. I've never been in an environment where I felt like there was just such a ease
Yeah.
to just hear from God,
Right.
to hear from
Right.
heaven.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with, you know, the preparation that our leadership put into it, but also just the hunger, you know.
Right.
This whole past season, everybody's had an opportunity to position their hearts in the right way, to not be discouraged, to not be
Yeah.
disappointed, to just expect to move ahead, to expect greater things from God. And you could tell that there was a release that came from
It's so
that
true,
draw
yeah,
in heaven,
yeah.
you know. So
And it came from the very first moment.
Yes, it's
Like
true.
when you guys got up there and started to worship, it was just like heaven.
Yeah, it
open,
was
you know.
awesome.
Yeah, it was so powerful. And so he makes comments. A lot of these guys have just pulled out little things that they heard, right, from different people saying things. He says, under the new covenant, when you're receiving tithes from people, Jesus is receiving them in heaven.
Yeah, it's
Thought
pretty cool.
That's really cool. It's the high priest, really caught that. If you're always in need, we had several people call, and it was just a little thing I said once.
Yeah.
If you're always in need, there's something wrong.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that people really got a lot out of was the whole succession thing too, which a lot of our
Right.
leaders talked about. Because a lot of times we think of the succession thing as something that happens in the distant future when you're about ready to like keel over, you know, the end of my life is here. But I really love that because we're such a discipleship making, such a like releasing the next leaders, like you never get finished with mentoring people. There's always more people that you're growing.
Right, yeah.
That the idea of succession is something that you focus on today, you know. And I
yes.
think a lot of leaders got a lot of stuff out of that. I know for me it was a good thing to think about because I still view myself as quite young, but there's other areas in the ministry that I'm responsible for with income producing, and I got to think about
Right.
those kind of things, you know,
Yeah,
because
that's right.
you don't want to be behind on it
Yeah,
when it happens.
yeah, and I would say, you know, to our credit, that we've looked at succession every year for a number of years, and it really has worked out. Like
Yes.
we're having great success all across the nations as far as we can tell. So it's really cool. And that was the session that you and Matt did on busy being destructive as sin. And I mean, that was really on your heart, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's something that, I mean, God's obviously been dealing with me and talking to me about.
Oh, right.
Because you feel like in order to be productive, you have to be busy. And you know that busy is a strain on your time and a strain on your energy, but you think that it's what you have to do. But when you actually put it in the same category as that it has the same effect as sin does on your life, it takes you away from time, from developing those relationships, time
Right.
in God's presence, time in the Word and those kind of things. And when you actually see the effects of it on your life, it's not actually an option to be busy or not busy.
Right,
You
right.
have to deal with busy and
Yeah.
get it not determining your life
So
structure,
true.
because you have to have healthy relationships with God
Yeah.
and with other people if we're going to
Yeah.
move ahead.
Yeah, and I find too, it's people seem to be one way or the other.
Yeah.
There's people that are just never busy, and they don't produce much, right?
Yeah.
But we're talking about the people that are really gung ho.
Well, I think you can be productive, and that's what we were learning here, right?
Mm.
You can be productive and still have time for those relationships, but you
Right.
can't let the ministry take all of your time so that you have no time with God, no
Yeah.
time with, because it's a tragedy, you know, leaders that are leading ministries, but they don't have time in prayer and in the Word. Like, how
Right.
does that happen? But
Yeah.
it does happen, you
It
know.
does happen,
So
yeah,
we have to
happens a
guard
lot.
against that, yeah.
And this other comment too, he said, look for young people who are not playing games. He means video games, right? And give them your camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and
Love
that was
that.
the result of, we're just saying, looking around, and everybody, I mean, there's so many cameras, right?
Yes, yeah.
And there's so many guitars, and there's so many, I mean, people doing stuff. And the way that we raise leaders is by giving young people something important to do, something significant to
right.
do.
Yeah.
And so that was the point, like, give them a camera. When they come into the church, don't just make them sit there.
Yeah.
Or they won't stick, right?
Yeah, and don't make up a unimportant job.
Right,
Give them something
yeah.
of significance.
So every Sunday, I mean, there's hundreds of pictures taken in our churches, and they'll post 50 on Facebook and Instagram.
Yes.
But they're engaged, right? So, and then Pastor Rich, and that's really, really key here. He says many of our leaders are all saying the same thing. They've been revived. They're determined to dream bigger. As for me, Dr. L's message on the first night about God showing Peter a bigger picture is what resonates. I came back determined to believe God for more. One thing that I love about our leaders, like all of these guys, Rich, they're all listeners. We're all listeners.
Yeah.
And we're always listening and saying, God, where do you want to take me from here?
Yeah.
What can I do to improve from here, right? And
Yeah.
that's just so cool.
Pastor Ning said the same thing along the same lines with Pastor Rich, right? The message about encountering God in our boat. And that really was a powerful message. If you haven't listened to it, you need to. And if you have listened to it, it's one of those messages that I think you got to go back to and listen to again, because we get so wrapped up in our everyday. But the idea that Jesus is actually in our boat and he's speaking something new in the same situation, in the same circumstance,
Right.
but it's going to produce something different in our life.
Yeah.
It's a powerful picture, and once we get that revelation, it changes the mundane everyday that you're doing into something that's actually an opportunity for a miracle again.
Wow.
So
Sure
it's
does,
very
yeah.
good.
Yeah, that's right. And she talked about the spiritual inheritance. Pastor Rich preached boldly on that.
That was such a
Wonderfully on
good
that.
message, because I think
Yeah.
sometimes we get so caught up in the administration, the systems, the discipling, the learning, you kind of forget about the supernatural realm.
Right,
It's
right.
like, what's the point if we're not actually dealing in the supernatural realm? God wants to be releasing miracles. He wants to be releasing the prophetic word. He wants to be releasing, instructions from heaven and things that are going to move our churches in a supernatural way. And I think when we grow to the point where we're experiencing a level of success based on our skills, because you grow as a leader and all that stuff,
Right.
you kind of sometimes can quit making room for the Holy Spirit to
Yeah.
move,
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of a crazy thing that happens, but it does happen, where we're not expecting the miraculous to happen. It should be part of our normal everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love that message from Pastor Rich. It was so
Yeah.
good.
And that's another one you need to listen
Yes.
to. And I'll just put the links for both of them. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put the links down in the description there. You can catch both of those. And then we come to Renee, which is, a lot of these people are graduates from our Bible school here, right? And they've gone on to do great things. And so she's talking about the family reunion of all of our amazing leaders across Asia. Again, people just love that. And learning from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like her point here, how Summit sets the course. It's kind of like the rudder on the ship. It sets the course for the year, for the ministry endeavors. And it's true, you know, because what happens is when you hear what God is doing and you get to spend time together in prayer and stuff, it really does set clarity of direction, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, even for myself, there's certain things that I'm like, I'm not sure what to focus on. But after Summit, there's like clear direction. Okay, this is where you need to head. So it's very helpful that way.
And she also pointed out, she took charge of the media session there, but
that
she
was so
says she
good.
loved getting to spend time with the media guys from Asia. That's one thing that we've really, I think really the worship, developing worship, music ministry, that kind of stuff, and developing media is kind of two of our main focuses. And so that's what people come here to learn, actually, is to learn worship and to learn the media for the ministry that God's got for them. And so we really emphasize that all the time. And we're seeing it bear fruit all across the nations.
Yeah, and it was so good hearing from the nations. It was Thailand, India, and Cambodia that we heard from, right?
Right.
About how they're using it. And they were using it in different ways, but all so very well done, you know?
Right.
Like with India, their church is pretty much all online, you know? And it's effective because they're actually connecting with people. And yeah, just Cambodia, just what they're doing to showcase what God is doing there, and just the vision they have in Thailand for, you know, letting people, connecting to people through V-Life. It's really neat to see the different ideas that have come out of
Right.
media. It's not carbon copy. We're not all doing the same thing.
No, it's not.
But you take those principles and you do what works in your nation. And so
Yeah.
it's good to learn from other nations and see
It
how
really
they're doing
is,
it.
yeah. And I think a lot of times the mistake that we make with media is we see somebody else doing something and we do it,
Yeah.
and it doesn't work the same. But these guys really have developed through their creativity,
that's
and
right.
really God's been
Yes.
leading them in this, so it's some powerful things they got going. And then Shiny, God bless her, Joseph's wife from India. And this was all new to her, hey? Like, she comes from a very traditional background, and so all of this stuff, but she's so excited every time I see her. She comes up to
Yeah.
me, Pastor Al, God showed me this and this, and this
awesome.
is very, very
So
sweet.
encouraging, yeah. Her testimony was that she was really impacted by the Holy Spirit. You know, she encountered the presence of God in every session. And so that's what we wanted our leaders to get.
Yes.
We wanted everyone to come and get filled up again, you know.
Yeah. Prem from Nepal says, I really feel God is telling me to keep a close watch on how we live and on our teachings, to stay true to what is right for the sake of our own personal testimony and the message we preach.
So good.
Yeah. He's doing a tremendous work there. What I see from that, Becky, is he's not saying the same thing everybody else is saying. So God actually spoke something maybe a little bit different to him. That's the great thing about Summit.
Yeah.
God's not just speaking what we're saying.
Yeah, that's right.
He's getting through in a lot of ways. And he says, also meeting my bestie, friend, Pastor Joseph, was awesome. Joseph's
Yeah.
from India, Prem's from Nepal. They go back and forth, and it's just powerful.
The relationships are precious. And it's cool when we have the leaders sharing like this, because it's something that we all need to be reminded of, right? It's so very true what Pastor Prem says. We have to be aware of what it is that we're speaking and what we're saying,
Right.
because our testimony and our words have to match up.
Yeah, so
It's
true,
good.
isn't it? Yeah, that integrity is so important. And then we come to Sri Lanka. Felt surrounded by the love of Dr. Alan Terry and all the leaders across Asia. This team is very prophetic, which is really important to him. He's really trying to move ahead there in a nation that you just need clarity, right?
Yeah.
And so he talks about the word and the messages. But I love Chaminda in the sense that he's a real listener too. He's a real go-getter,
Yes.
but he also stops to listen. And you can see he's just really soaking it up, you know. And you kind of wonder, you know, because you host a summit like that, and you've got these guys that are, I mean, they're all powerful men and women,
Yes,
right? And
yeah.
they've all got churches and numbers of churches, and, you know, some of them 30 churches, some of them 20-some churches, you know. And they come to summit, and you're like, man, who am I to even speak to these guys, you know? But God comes through, and these powerful men and women of God are just, God speaks to them, right? And then Pakistan, Peter's just thankful because somebody sponsored him to come, which was really, because he wasn't planning on coming, right?
I'm glad he was able to come.
Yeah. So it was prophetic and encouraging for him. And he says, I found national leaders were more open to each other this time, and more listening and fellowship was happening. And that was more energizing for him. And he says, and that's important because launching out into the deep is a lifetime job.
Yeah, that's right. You know, it's kind of one of the things you could almost see. Like, everybody was so excited to come to Summit, but you could see people come in and they were like tired, you know?
Right. Very
And,
true.
you know, just needing some refreshment from God, needing a breakthrough, you know? And it was just neat from the beginning to the end. You could just see the countenance change,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
people walking in joy, greater peace. That was one of the things too that we just found over and over again through all the services at the end. There was just such a presence of God's peace, you know.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter how wild the services got or what happened. At the end, you just felt such a
Yeah.
such a calm, such a relaxing, you know, just presence of God. And it was so cool to kind of get that refreshment from
Yeah, it's so true.
from heaven.
Yeah. And Rachel from India, one of our favorite Indian girls, she says it's her most favorite thing ever to come to Summit. I wait for it every year. I receive more than before. And a powerful listener, Rachel. She comes determined to talk to everybody,
Yeah.
to glean from everybody, to learn from everybody. And they stayed over,
Yes.
what, a week?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
In Search afterwards. It was so much fun having them here.
Yeah, yeah.
Trying to like teach as much as you can in like a short period of time. They went back like full and tired. So
Yeah, and we sent them back with a computer, a new computer for doing media,
yeah,
and
that's
for
awesome.
doing their worship, and some T-shirts for the media team. I was there a month and a half ago, and taught media to their team in the afternoon, and so coming back here, I thought they should have media T-shirts, you know.
Yeah, so awesome.
And they're just so tickled about that, you know. They had a what did they call it? An opening ceremony where they opened a computer and the T-shirts and
That's
the
so cool.
drums.
Yeah,
that
Teddy
Teddy had bought them
gave, yeah.
some drums, and oh man, it's interesting to see the nations investing in each other.
Yes.
To me, that's so
A
powerful.
beautiful thing,
Yeah,
yeah.
and we actually did that in one service, in our covenant services. I just asked everybody to get up and go around and give something to somebody. And it was really
powerful.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, Rachel, we hear from those guys all the time, you know, every few days.
Yes.
They're sending a message. Oh, and there's your mom. Look at that.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Rachel. Yeah. And she was really a powerful blessing there, too. She says that some was like opening a door for me. The kingdom has come, and the commission is right before us. God's kingdom is advancing. We receive greater clarity in our vision as a family, what God's doing through us. There's an increase in the manifestation of His presence, release in miracles, and release in our finances, and that's a big one. We abound to every good work.
Yeah.
Yeah, releases ministering angels. She always starts by telling something, and then she ends up praying for you, like making a declaration. Now
true.
we've released the angels of God over you,
Yes.
and deliverance is coming, salvation here. Yeah, it's just so amazing. Eh? Yeah, and then she says, I found myself tearing up a few times when we had to leave.
Yeah.
trying to get out of there. It is tough because you just love everybody so much. Ralph, Cambodia.
Yeah, it was so good to see Ralph there. It was
Yeah.
awesome. Like the team from Cambodia, just doing such an amazing work. You know, they've got such a fight ahead of them, but they're just so determined to
Yes.
not let go of what it is that God's put in their heart, and that nation is going to be changed because of it. It's awesome. Again, just the messages I think were what really spoke to
Yeah.
him, and
Right.
I love how he talked about like that there's an inheritance there that God actually wants to release, because a lot of times, you know, especially in our nations, there's stuff that's been sown before, missionaries have been gone
Right.
before, you know, and you kind of look at the nation, you're like, why isn't it moving ahead? But just getting a hold again of there's foundations there.
Right.
God hasn't just started something brand new and you're like starting from zero.
Right.
There's an inheritance there that's not just in the nation, but also in our company, which I
Right.
love too, because you can come in as a newbie and not totally know what you're doing, but there's a rich heritage that, you know, there's a whole company
Yeah.
of leaders behind us. So
Right.
you don't have to be afraid to step out. You don't have to be afraid to be the new guy and do something different,
Yeah.
because there's an inheritance there. So
Yeah.
you're not alone, you know, and I think that's probably what I think impacted a lot of our guys too, because you feel a little bit lonely sometimes,
Right.
you know, when you're out in the mission field. And
Yeah.
so I think it was really good for Ralph to share that.
Well, and those guys too. I mean, Ralph particularly. You know, they went back into Cambodia in the middle of COVID. It was hard to get
Yeah.
there. They did through all the quarantine and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the church just basically went down to nothing.
Yeah.
Because they had an international church. Well, all the internationals have gone.
Yeah.
And they're starting over again. And and you know, he was really open about it. He said it's just wearing him out,
Yeah.
you know. But now he just really caught some fire and expecting to go back and,
Yeah,
and see some
amen.
amazing things break out. So
Yeah, I love what Joseph wrote. It's so cool. He says, "The first day of worship in Dr. Al Purvis's word melted my heart with the heavy presence of God, and began to see the pictures that God put in my heart from years ago with clarity like never before." You know, God's already dropped it. It kind of gets covered up sometimes with
Yeah.
all of the stuff that we go through, but then God just brings it back out. And again, you know, Pastor Joseph talked about Pastor Rich's word about being astounded by miracles, expecting miracles. I think
Right.
every one of us needed to hear that, because
Yeah.
God wants to release His greatness in us. He wants to release His supernatural power in us. We need to believe
so
Him for
true.
more.
Yeah, yeah. He loved every Q&A session. We do a lot of interactive stuff at Summit. Very
Yeah.
little preaching. It's mostly interactive, getting people involved and hearing from everybody. And he says they're full power packed, but especially honest, transparent leadership of all of our leaders. He really likes that, because we're not afraid to put it out there. And
Yeah, I loved too, like Mama's session with the ladies, because you could just see the different giftings and the different
Right.
personalities and
Right.
the, you know, but it was so cool to see that it all works
Yes,
together. It
yeah.
all is meant, you know, you've got just different, totally different perspectives, different leadership personalities, but you can see that God works through it all. There's
Yes,
no
yeah.
right way, wrong way, as far as like, you know, we're walking in the principles that God's called us to walk in, and He does it through your personality, through your
Yeah.
perception,
Right.
through your culture, through all of those things, you know, so it's really cool to see. I love that.
Yeah, it was really neat to have all the ladies up there. I had, what did we have? 2 moms and 2 daughters, right? And the 2 moms are really good friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very sweet.
Yeah, and they're always just full of thanks. Everybody's so full of thanks. And then Chris and Mary Rose, who we sent from here, they're Filipinos, but we sent them from here after being in the ministry here and Bible school here for several years, into Vietnam to start planting churches there. And they're doing an amazing job. It's been a couple of years now, and God is just opening doors for them powerfully. And they're also like very thankful people, very honoring. You know, they're they're just so happy to be here.
Yeah, and I love how they're so clear on what it is God's called them to do, because
Right.
they know they're called to the nation of Vietnam, but the open door that God's given them is through a Christian school
Right.
program, and they're being so faithful in just teaching those kids and raising those kids
Right.
up, and through that God's opened doors to other churches there. A lot of the kids that they're mentoring are kids that actually are pastors' kids, you know. So Vietnam is a bit of a different country as far as the freedom that you have
Right.
to evangelize and to plant churches. And so like it's so cool to see that God has a specific strategy for each nation,
Yeah.
you know. And as you just walk in obedience to what God's called you to do, you don't have to do it like everybody else, you know.
Yes, yeah.
I'm a church planter, but I'm planting churches through Christian education, you
Right,
know. Like
right.
it's really neat to see
Yeah, that's right.
that confidence that
Yeah.
comes from knowing you're just hearing God and you're obeying, and
Yeah, so true.
see His blessing
isn't it?
on
Yeah.
your life. Yeah.
Yeah, and both of them, each of them, Chris and Mary Rose, each of them are in charge of a different
Yeah.
Christian school now. Like, I don't know, or like the principals or
they
whatever.
have 2 different actually schools. It's all under the same lady who owns
Oh,
it, but
okay,
it's 2
yeah.
different schools in 2 different locations, and yeah, it's pretty neat. to
That's
see.
really cool. And they got, you know, their own kids, 3 of their own kids, and that
Yeah.
kind of brings up a youth group, and they got a
Yeah.
lot of youth stuff going
Lots
on.
of
Yeah.
opportunities to
So-
minister there.
So cool. Yeah, and Johnson, another guy from India, one of our students here before, says it's his 5th summit. I'm surprised, you know, that he's been here 5 times for summit.
These guys know.
They don't.
Gotta come.
Yeah, and they know that that's going to be where it's at, right? Like, and it really is for them. It does give them a big charge. So again, the messages were really, really important. The table talks, he loved them. Eliminate the hurry, learn how to simplify and slow down. And nothing happens until you declare it.
Yeah, that
Get
was so
back to
good.
the miraculous.
Yeah.
Was so powerful from Bishop Rich. Yeah, and then again, shout out to Mom and Dad, Matt and Becky for being amazing, and it's great to be loved, isn't it, Becky?
It is.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And Micah, he's kind of like our hero in Myanmar, sent from here.
We really have the best people in the world, you know.
Yeah, we
like
really
it's just phenomenal how amazing everybody is.
Yeah,
And I love
Yeah.
his heart too, because he says, I learned twice by reading these posts, because all the leaders posted their comments in this, you know. It's very cool. But that's, all of our leaders have that learning heart, like you said,
right.
that listening
yeah.
heart.
Yeah, it's so true. Just let me add a couple of things. I've seen that there's prosperity and abundance in fishes, the fishes that Peter caught in his net. And God showed me not just by words, but in practical evidence on the last night. And we did that thing where people went around and gave money to each other. But I was looking through some of the video clips, Beck, and there's a lineup of people trying to give money to Micah.
It's awesome. But then, like, there's actually a miracle that God did in that, because Michael was receiving all of these gifts, and he felt like God told him to empty out one side of his pocket. I can't remember which side, and give it all without even counting it, not even knowing what was in it. And he did. And then right after Summit, we were up in Chiang Mai for a different event, a worship event, and one of the leaders from a missionary organization from Korea in Thailand that does like music and stuff like that, they blessed him financially. So like God works through his kingdom everywhere, you know, in through every season and every situation. But when you operate in obedience and you just obey what he's saying, and, you know, God just gave him such a release, because it's a struggle in those nations, you know. But you know that you're called to prosperity regardless of the economic situation, the financial situation. And the great thing is, when you learn how to operate out of God's kingdom instead of the kingdom that we're stuck in this earth, you get to do things that nobody else gets to do, because you walk in a supernatural level of abundance and prosperity, and it's just going to increase in Micah's life and all of our leaders.
And we saw pictures of where it is that he's ministering. And that is a hole. Like full of mud, like seriously. It is gross.
And he's been so faithful, you know, so faithful to just go and love on people, clean their houses, you know.
Clean their bathrooms.
Just servanthood, you know. He has the heart to just serve and love people well, the way that Jesus does. But he's going to grow the most amazing leaders, because you can't be loved and served like that and not have it change your life in a way that just changes the whole trajectory, you know. When we receive the love of God in that kind of way, it changes your DNA from the inside out. It doesn't just impact you on the outside, like now I have a nice bathroom. It actually does something to your heart.
That's right.
And, he's going to have some amazing leaders coming up.
So he went back, the end of that financial stories, he went back to Burma with PA system for his church.
It's awesome. Very cool.
And I love it that he could do that here too, because we have the guys here in VW, right, Victory Worship, that know how to do that. So Pot took him to this music shop in the capital city here and bought the right stuff for the right price, and
it's a PA system that has like a little mixer built right into it, so you don't have to have all of these different things. And it works for the worship team that he's training up. He's got a young youth group there and worship team there. So it's awesome.
It's great. Prophetic words that he got, you know, what's in his boat. The messages are all connected. Pastor Rich, Papa Ray Bassett was here from Canada and really shook the boat.
Awesome.
And it was really good. It's great to have him. And they were all one message from God, he says. So I'm so thankful to have all of you as leaders. And he says, let's not change the picture that God has shown you, right? Stay clear. So, that's awesome. Man, you can't help but love these guys, Beck?
And, you know, it's so thankful that everybody made the time and made the trip. And it's cool because God's spoken to us for this season. So it's really awesome that we got all these powerful messages and everything like that. But we're not going to hang our forever lives on these things, because God is doing new things too, you know. Summit is good. We've received from God for this season, but there's a future ahead for us. There's more that God is speaking and more that he's doing. So this is going to carry us through until we meet up again in Summit next year in the Philippines, and God's going to have something that's even more amazing than we experienced this year. That's the great thing about being part of the kingdom of God, is he just adds blessing on blessing, abundance on abundance, you know. He doesn't run out. He doesn't run dry. So
that's right. And so we are busy getting ready for Summit 2023. It's going to be in Manila, Philippines, October of 2023. The great thing about that is we want to invite you to come, because you can come to that one.
You have a whole year.
That's right.
Plan for it.
To get ready. And I tell you what, I promise it'll be absolutely life-changing. We've got a venue booked there that seats 5,000 people for a great anniversary service that we're going to have on the Sunday, bring all of our Philippines churches together. All of the leaders will be there from all over Asia, and Bible school students will be there. And so you really want to think about that. I think it would be really, really good. And there's one more thing that I need you to do. How would you like to play a significant role in what's going on across Asia? Here's the deal. If you would think of a person, a young person, who maybe not be as clear about God's call in their lives as they could be, I want you to connect them with us and encourage them. Send them to our Bible college here in Thailand, Victory Asia Bible College, because that's where all of this amazing church planting, leadership, and all that kind of stuff, that's where all the training happens, and all of the blessing comes out of that place. We call that the Victory Asia platform. And so we really, really want to have more kids from every country in the world, right? And we need more Western kids from Canada, the States, England, and those places. And so think about a person, young person, that you could send, life-changing, never be the same again.
Yeah.
And then that could be a powerful role that you would play in the Great Commission.
I cannot stay silent 'cause you turn my
Every sorrow is a song of joy today in Jesus' name.
You fill me with gladness, songs of your goodness, overflow.
It overflows. It's flooding my soul. It's taking over me. Yeah. Hallelujah. You are good and faithful, God. You are good and faithful. We worship you, God. Worthy are you, Lord. Worthy are you, Lord. Worthy are you, God. We give you praise. We give you praise. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, God. He's good and faithful.